Picture a game where not some ragged nobody clawing your way up from the gutter. You are the ruler of a starship the size of a small city, with enough power to wipe an entire planet off the map if you don't like someone's tone. That's Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, and if you thought Baldur's Gate 3 was the selling of the genre, buckle up, I've got news for you. Let's get into what this game actually is and whether it's worth your time. Rogue Trader comes from Owlcat Games, the studio that already gave the genre to Pathfinder games. These people are some of the best writers working in cRPG right now. Dialogue that actually makes you think, companions you genuinely believe in, and character building deep enough that min-maxers could disappear into it for weeks. The camera is isometric, combat is turn-based, yes, there is no real-time option here, and exploration, world interaction and heavy decision-making are how you push the story forward. The game takes place in the Warhammer 40k universe, a grim distant future where humanity is at war with literally everything that moves. Demons, aliens, heresy, and most terrifying of all, its own bureaucracy. If you don't know the setting, don't worry, the game genuinely holds your hand. Unfamiliar terms get highlighted right in the dialogue window, and NPC will walk you through whatever you need to know. The catch, you'll be reading a lot. If you are used to modern games trimming everything down to a line or two per response, forget it, dialogue windows here can run literal pages. You start out at the heir to a Rogue Trader, basically the Emperor's own guy out here, with the kind of authority most people would kill for, and by the end of the prologue you officially take that seat, which means you start off as a huge deal already. And Owlcat plays this brilliantly. You command an entire sector of space, and it's a mess of constant unrest, uprisings, outbreaks of heresy, attacks from hostile Zenith races, you name it. You'll regularly be the one setting these conflicts, and spoiler, there is no sitting on the fence here. Your character can follow one of three paths of conviction. Dogmatic, you are loyal to the Emperor down to your bones. His written laws are gospel, and any deviation is punished with death. Iconoclast, you put humanity's well-being first, and you're willing to bend a few laws for the greater good, or at least that's what you tell yourself. And the last one is heretical. Screw the Emperor and his laws, you are doing whatever gets you the most fun and profit. So why does any of this matter? The game wants you to actually commit to something, and once you push far enough down one, it becomes your dominant conviction, locking you out of certain key story branches tied to the path you didn't commit to. Which brings us to dialogue choices and consequences. Most of the game's dialogue isn't voiced, but what is voiced is done at an incredibly high level. The writing itself is top tier and almost always pulls you in. The game usually gives you enough context before a decision that you actually understand what you are choosing, rather than picking blind. Sometimes getting extra info or unlocking a specific line requires passing a skill check, and sometimes that check happens silently in the background. Nearly every major decision has real consequences, and here's what I genuinely appreciated. The game shows you exactly how a past choice shaped what's happening now, which helps a ton when that decision was 40 hours ago and you've completely forgotten it existed. Once Chapter 1 wraps up, the game drops you onto a galaxy map packed with star system linked by travel routes that cut through the warp, a parallel dimension crawling with demons that humanity has somehow figured out how to use for space travel. During warp jumps, all kind of things happen back on the ship, mutinies, incidents, or your retinue getting up to something. While exploring these systems, you'll gather resources, uncover new locations, and stumble into space battles. The ground locations themselves follow a familiar structure, a big area to explore, fight through, disarm traps, solve puzzles, loot and push quests forward. You also end up governing actual colonies, entire planets under your control that you can develop however you see fit. Developing them costs resources, but in return you get unique talents and exclusive gear you can find anywhere else. Running colonies ties directly into something called profit factor, basically a measure of how loaded you are, and the higher it climbs, the more goods and gear become available to you. Separately, your reputation with specific trade factions also affects what's available, and colony projects are one of the main ways to push up both your profit factor and that reputation. Throughout the game, you'll run into characters you can recruit. There is a genuinely huge roster of potential companions, 16 counting the DLC, but your active party caps at 6, including yourself, so you'll be making cuts either way. Most companions are written extremely well, properly woven into the main story, each with their own arc and quest. Not all of them get the same depth though. A few have quests limited to a single location. The game also gives you a wide range of romance options, and you can actually romance several companions at once before locking in your final pick later in the game. Now let's get into character creation. When you create your character, you pick one of 5 classes. Here are called archetypes, which shape your combat style. A warrior, for instance, specializes in melee, while a soldier focused on ranged. Once any archetype hits level 16, you unlock one of several advanced archetypes that builds on and expands your playstyle. Character creation also has you set core stats, skills, origin, and a few other things. Stats affects your combat performance and your baseline skill values. Skills come into play for checks in dialogue and exploration. For example, rallying your crew with a speech requires a persuasion check. Origin unlocks extra talents, dialogue lines, and access to specific gear. As you level up, you'll unlock dozens of archetype talents and abilities, plus a bunch of universal talents on top. If you are playing on hard or above, you'll actually need to think about your picks. Combat in Rogue Trader is complex and varied enough that I genuinely can't cover it in full in this video, but I'll walk you through the basics. A fight opens with unit placement, and turn order gets decided by an initiative roll. Every character has movement and action points, and in most cases, once you take an attack action, whatever movement points you had left get burned. The whole system is tactical, built around your chances to deal and avoid damage based on positioning, your build, and what you do during the fight. Your combat style isn't just shaped by your archetype, but also by the weapon type you are running. In ranged combat, for instance, you could run a shotgun and stay in the thick of the fight, or a sniper rifle and hold a safe position instead. Roughly speaking, combat splits into melee, ranged, and psychic powers. Melee and ranged play out pretty standard. So what are psychic powers then? There are 2 types of casters. Navigator, a unique skill set available to exactly one companion, Cassia, so I'd strongly recommend bringing her on your first playthrough. Navigator powers are built around battlefield control and heavy AoE. Psyker, the second caster type, who draw their powers straight from the warp, which comes with the real downsides. Every time you use a Psyker power, there is a chance it triggers a Perils of the Warp, a random negative effect that can range from something fairly harmless to new enemies showing up on the battlefield. Psykers also have several development paths that determine which abilities you'll actually have access to. On top of that, every character can pop one ultimate per fight, gated behind hitting a certain momentum threshold. Momentum is basically a life readout of how the fight is going for you. If things are going badly and your momentum is low, using your ultimate, called a desperate measure in this state, can swing the fight back your way, but it slaps a debuff on you for the rest of the battle. If you are stream rolling the enemy instead, that same ultimate becomes a heroic act, usable to close out the fight faster with zero downside. Characters can't actually die in combat, but if their health drops below half, they take a fresh injury, which turns into an old injury a few turns later. Stack up enough injuries and you get a trauma. A character whose health hits 0 gets knocked out, takes a trauma, and is done fighting for the rest of the battle. Traumas come with serious stat debuffs, so you don't want to let them pile up. You can clear them back on your ship or with a medkit. Once the fight ends, everyone's health resets automatically and anyone knocked out gets back up. That said, as much as I love this game, it's far from perfect. I put in 190 hours on hard difficulty, checking every corner, and the game does drag in places. Chapter 2 alone took me roughly half my entire playthrough. Some star systems felt basically empty, and dealing with ship problems got tedious after a while. The game really does try to make every encounter feel unique, but it doesn't always land it, and combined with the turn-based pacing, that can get old. The space combat system also felt pretty dull to me. It doesn't offer much of a tactical challenge, and the mechanics are fairly shallow. The game runs on Unity and is surprisingly demanding on your hardware. Even on my rig with a 4090, frame rate would occasionally dip to 20. That said, the vast majority of the time it ran rock solid, and I barely hit any bugs at all. If you're into deeply written stories, tactical combat, and build crafting you can lose yourself in, you're going to love this game. It's one of the best the genre has to offer right now. Owlcat put in serious work here, and I'm hoping they've got a few more masterpieces like this one left in them. I'll be breaking down the combat system in a lot more depth in a separate video soon, so consider subscribing if you don't want to miss it. By the way, if you want to grab it, keys for Rogue Trader and other games for PC and consoles at good prices is in description. See you next time!